compliance with the Virginia Beach Code, Section 2-21, and by special authority vested in me as mayor, I hereby call for a special meeting of the Virginia Beach City Council on Tuesday, August 26, 2025, and Wednesday, August 27, 2025, beginning at 8:30, Virginia Beach Convention Center, 1019th Street, Suite 2. The purpose of the special meeting is to hold the City Council retreat listed in the published agenda. Sincerely, Bobby D. But thank you all for being here. We are here, and I just want to thank everyone for being here. You know, this is a time to pause and reflect and, come together in public to talk about many of the discussions that we don't have the opportunity sometimes to talk about. We come here to kind of refocus and, get our act together because once again, when we take a look, we are not the only city in the country, confronting many of the realities of tough times. And therefore, it really helps us to get know each other a little better, but it also gives us time to, really get, deep into, some of the, most troubling issues that going forward. So once again, these are very, very purposeful, and we have a lot of area to cover. And the first area that we're going to be covering is a very, controversial discussion in the inter-facility area, and discussing with the facilitator, just in times of time and convenience, we're going to have a timer on some of the discussions. But once again, please, it's a matter of being succinct, but, just say what's on your heart and mind, and we want to hear from everybody going forward. So once again, I turn it over to our Patrick. Anything?
Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to Julie now. Julie's going to ask city council members to give a welcome and to talk about the things they want to discuss here today, and then I'll probably take a couple minutes at the end to kind of wrap up the focus action plan process and how it works in setting this, setting the pace and the cadence for the city's work plan.
Okay, and if we could start with, Stacy. Is this a point where you have, people state? Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I think it'll be good if you let Julie kind of lay the groundwork of what the ask is going to be for the council members.
Good.
Good morning, Mayor, members of council. Thank you so much for having me back. Julie Brenman with Fountainworks. I've got two members of my team with me today, Laura Gomez-Nichols and Olive Newman, and we are really looking forward to the discussion today and tomorrow. I wanted to review the agenda for today and tomorrow, and then we'll do some warm-up question to get you start thinking. And the first deep discussion is going to be about the ITA. You all have a folder in front of you with handouts that we'll be referencing during different parts. So the agenda is, it looks like on the left-hand side. It's also up on the wall behind the staff. So we're starting today with a welcome, and we'll talk about the ITA for a good chunk of time. Staff needs direction on what council wants as next steps related to the ITA. We're then going to, after that, take a break and talk about Virginia Beach's current context. So the main purpose originally for the retreat was to set a 24-month focused action plan for the next 2 years. 2 years ago, you set your priorities, and the staff developed a focused action plan. The purpose in doing this is to refresh that. You've got new members of council, and the focused action plan really gives staff direction for how to move forward. As we think about moving forward, we think it's important to think about the current context you're operating in and just remind you of some of the accomplishments and demographics and trends before you think about priorities. We'll then spend the rest of the day after that talking about your priorities and setting your priorities. We're planning to adjourn today no later than 5:30. I know that's a long day, so it's no later than 5:30. We'll come back tomorrow if there's anything we haven't wrapped up today. we can finish talking about the focused action plan and priorities, but we think we'll get through that today. And then there's opportunity tomorrow for council discussion. Several of you have shared a few things that you want to discuss at the retreat related to governance and some policies for the council to think about. So we've got time to do that tomorrow, and we'll wrap up with you tomorrow no later than 11:30. We'll then take the department directors and work with them on everything they heard you all set as your priorities to start mapping out the action plan so that they can immediately take it out to the public to get their input and reflections on what you all have said, and then they'll be able to set their work plans for the next 2 years and bring it back to you, I think, in November for final adoption. As we work together, we've got in our sailboats over there some roles. We as Fountain Works are here as facilitators. We're bringing you all together. We're going to make sure I tag team with the mayor. Everyone has an opportunity to speak, and we stay on time. You all in the center in the green boat, you are the participants. This retreat is about you. People want to hear what your priorities are. We want to hear you discuss with each other. City staff is here as subject matter experts. There'll be a couple of brief presentations, and they're here for questions, but the discussion is really about you. And then the public is welcome to attend either in person or virtually, hello out there, as observers. This isn't a public hearing, so this isn't the time for them to comment, but they are always at the center of everything you do. You're doing your work for the public. Our rules at the bottom is we're hoping that you all can seek common understanding, if not consensus. There are some issues where you're not gonna, all 11 of you agree, but we hope you all understand each other and understand the perspectives so staff can have the direction of moving forward. 10 of the 11 of you represent your districts, but we want to encourage you to focus citywide. You're here for the common good of the entire city. And then, as the mayor said, I'm going to be using my little timer every now and then to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak. We've got a lot to cover in the day and a half and want to make sure that we keep moving and have good conversations as well. Any questions about our agenda? All right. What we're going to start with is some opening. We've got a theme for today and tomorrow, and that is we're building some sandcastles. So you've got your bucket and your shovel in front of you. And I want you to think of the metaphor of when you're building the future of the city, when you're building your sandcastle, you might have a vision for how you're constructing it. And sometimes it gets hard. Sometimes the sand isn't firm enough. Sometimes a wave comes up and erases some of your progress, but you can keep working on it. And so we're going to, over the next day and a half, be thinking about how we're building sandcastles as a metaphor for continuing to make progress for the city of Virginia Beach. So each of you has a cute little envelope in your bucket. Laura hand drew those little sandcastle pictures on there when she was watching TV, so she had fun drawing those. In it, you each have a question. I think there's 2 questions. And so with that, we're going to ask you to go around the room and introduce yourself and kind of set your intention for how we're going to be building our sandcastles together for the next day and a half. There's 2. If you don't like one, you can flip it over and have the other. Is anyone ready? And read your question, too.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. And I'd like to analogy of the sailboats. So because it's all of us together, the facilitators, Welcome Fountain Works. Don't put the timer on yet. But anyhow, and staff and the public. So this is my third or fourth retreat, and I'm looking forward to it. So my question, if a genie granted you one sandcastle-related superpower, in parentheses, like endless sand or perfectly packed wet sand, what would you choose? So there are a lot of things to do with this question, but one is this is democracy. It's ruled by a majority, and so I think this council gets along very well. We are all very respectful. I think the public does respect us. We respect the public. So I just want that to continue, that we work together. Many of our votes are unanimous. I think we have clear vision. That's what this week or these 2 days are for, is to clarify and refine that vision, see where we are. That's my intention. We can get lost in priorities. We can do paralysis by analysis. But if the one superpower is that we continue to act like one body, we're going to have some disagreements, and I can name a few very quickly. But that's what democracy is about, and this is what we are, Democratic Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Stacy.
Thank you. My question is, what's important to teach a child when they first start building sandcastles? So I would start off by saying, why are we building the sandcastle? What's the purpose? And I would emphasize that it's an expression of yourself, that you're building it the way you want to build it, and there'll never be another sandcastle exactly like yours. It's unique to you, and so do with it what you think reflects on you.
Thank you.
Okay, Josh.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and good to see everybody. Thank you again, Julie, for being here. You do great work, and
Thanks.
glad to see you back. My question was, what are some unexpected things that can happen while you're building your sandcastle? And I thought of a couple things. Obviously, waves and water crashing over the sandcastle or the tide coming in, and then the condition of the sand itself. I mean, you could encounter dry sand that doesn't pack very well, or wet sand that does, and there's some other things, bad things, I suppose, that could happen to sandcastles on a beach. Water was a theme to me, and it's certainly a theme to us. So, water can be provide an assist when you're building a sandcastle by making it stronger, but it can also wash it away. And very much like Virginia Beach, water is our greatest asset. It's in our name, beach, and it's why people come here. It's why people settled here, and it's one of the, major reasons why everybody loves living here and visiting here. So, but as we all know, water also presents its, an existential threat and challenge to us, and it's one that we'll have to continue navigating over the generations. But it's one that I think if you plan around, and we have, and we're becoming more resilient, and we're better prepared these days to confront these threats. And I think we'll have a great looking sandcastle for many generations.
Okay, great. Cash?
Good morning, everyone. Good to see. This is my second retreat. Okay, all right, tough crowd. Anyway, right, thank you. And the question for me, thank you, this is a beautiful drawing. Sandcastle with stars on it. If you were to add finesse to the top of your sandcastle, would you use seashells, a flag, or something else? I definitely would use seashells because of the uniqueness of their personalized imprint, which for me sets in motion government at its best. It's not us all looking alike. It's our individual uniqueness that makes Virginia Beach, Virginia Beach. And the acceptance of our individual uniqueness. That's what I would like to say. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Jen?
Actually, this is very vulnerable. I feel exposed by these questions considering I'm from Virginia Beach. I don't like sand. I like the ocean. I've never, so both, like, the one question was if a wave takes out your sandcastle, what would you do? I would leave it. And I would go to the boardwalk. But let me not think that way.
Let's
say-
use this as a metaphor.
Yes.
For
Yeah. So this says, I'll do this one. What's your first step when you build a sandcastle? So my first thought was gather sand. So just kind of start compiling sand to build. But then my follow-up thought was, well, maybe I should start with what idea do I want for the sandcastle to then know how much sand to gather. So that's where my mind went. The first step initially was get all the sand you can get. But then I stopped and thought, well, maybe first, what do I want it to look like? And then I'll know what sand to gather. So that's my answer.
Good. Who's next? Hutch?
I first started to just not say anything, and hopefully for time's sake, I could just be skipped and it would be okay. But no, I've got a good question, and I too like the drawing, so thank you. Some people think sandcastles are just for kids. How can they be multi-generation? How can they be a multi-generational tool that brings people together? I like this a lot, this question, and yeah, I get choked up sometimes when I feel like I shouldn't, but this room right now, I don't know if the public can see it, but really for us in here, this means a lot to me. Multi-generational, we have some younger folks, we have some older folks that have been here, but what I see right now is how I'd see a sandcastle being built. I can't take the public safety out of me. It's in my DNA. You know, you start with the outer rings and you come in and it gets more fortified and it gets bigger and stronger. And then unfortunately, we're either in the middle, maybe we're in the middle of the Coliseum, I'm not sure here, but I hope we're in the middle of the strength of what we bring, because all the way around us, you know, I don't know, there's 100 directors in here right now, and assistant directors and stuff. So to me, the multi-generational part is everybody coming up through there. I know we have to also talk about the generations that come behind us is what the multi-generational part. But I think when they see our city, we bring it. We bring it on every level. Every department in here has serious awards, you know, and it's not just fluff. It's that they are doing it every day. And so to me, I know sand, I think of it and I look at the picture and I think it's being washed away. Yeah, but ours, I like to say, has a little poured concrete in it. You know what I mean? We're a little tougher than that. And we've proven it over the years from the shooting and from all the other things that we've been through and the brushes with the hurricanes and everything else. We have a lot of stuff, all the events we put on. Anyway, I can go on and on. I'm going too long, but thanks. Appreciate it.
Amelia? On the spot.
Good morning to everyone, and thank you all for being here, and thank you too for facilitating us. Mine is similar to Councilman Hutch, because it says some people think sandcastles are just for kids. How can there be a multi-generational tool that brings people together? One of the first things I thought about, growing up, we were not allowed to get in the water. Some of you may relate to that, and that's because of a lot of rip current across the West African coast. But as I traveled and got to watch and see young people, I realized one of the most important for me that relates to this is our parks, our recreation, like the Gromick. This is where both generations can come together to make a great difference for our city. So this is where I'm thinking, and sharing a time that I saw a sandcastle takes me back to my granddaughter building one out near Gromick Park. And I said, how are you fixing this? She says, oh, it's important that I put a moat around it, because this castle has to be protected. So you've got to look at safety. So she got water and poured it all the way around there. And then she put something on the top. She says, this shows, and I said, well, what do you have on the top? And she says, well, this is the cap. You know, Grammy, as you're there working with council and so forth, you people are sometimes up there on the top. Somehow she saw us but she was using those analogies over to that sandcastle. And that inspired me because what we do here feeds back to that next generation. They're watching and they're interpreting it in their own way. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you, Mayor, and welcome, and I'm glad to be with all of you again this morning. My question was, do you prefer to build a sandcastle using a mold or build your own? And of course, for me, the answer is that I prefer to build my own because there's no way that you can create something that's original and that will stand the test of time. And when you're building a sandcastle, I'm looking at the shore, you have to contemplate the uniqueness of where you're putting the sandcastle, and a mold could never allow you to achieve that. You remember when you build a sandcastle and the water comes up and kind of eats it away, and the terrain is a little bit different. So if you take the time to be strategic and be thoughtful and be deliberate, you can create a sandcastle that's unique to where you placed it and will be more lasting, more robust, and also more meaningful and more creative. And so that's why I would prefer to build our own.
Thank you. Barbara?
Well, if I were to add finesse to the top of your sandcastle, would you use seashells, a flag, or something else? Well, just in relation to this question being a question for this retreat, I would have to say I would add something else. I would add a cluster of people, because this isn't my sandcastle. This is a sandcastle. I'm representing a lot of people, and there has to be input from a lot of different people to make this sandcastle the best. And so I see this importance of being a representative and knowing what others and having input from others is important, so we know how to make this sandcastle the special thing it needs to be.
Rosemary?
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to be together. Hopefully, we'll accomplish a lot today. My question is, what's important to teach a child when they first start building a sandcastle? I think it's really important to first get organized, to assess the area. You know, you want to get too close to the water because you're going to get washed out pretty quick. The quality of the sand, and gather your tools. Get all the tools that you're going to be needing. And think about exactly what you would like to do. But just like a painter probably spends more time on prep work than actual painting. And do your prep work ahead of time and be ready. And I think that's what this council does. We do a lot of prep work before we move forward on something. And we're very thoughtful. We listen to the public, and we try to make very sound decisions for everyone. And I think the same thing is true with this.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll tell you what, thank you. I think this is a very meaningful discussion. And my question is, what's the first step when you build a sandcastle? And when we go during the Neptune festival time, and we see the sand sculpture, and we see that beautiful art created out of our sand. And then once again, yeah, sometimes the beautiful art gets washed away. But what does the city do? We replace the sand. Okay, so we always have it there. And, you know, kind of like with what Hutch and Barbara said, the first thing I think you got to do is have a vision and to build something that people want to see. When you look around this room, we have a council. We have all the management and staff behind us that make, and, you know, their vision of what they want to see. But most of all, what Barbara said, what the public wants to see. So before you build a sandcastle, know what people want to see, that they can look at it and say, boy, that is reflective of my city. And everybody was included.
Thank you. Thank you all. I hope then, as you go through the next day and a half and continue to work for building the future of Virginia Beach, you keep in mind some of these sandcastle lessons. You know, you talked about we need a vision. That's what you're doing today. You're setting the vision for the next 2 years so that the staff can plan and organize and prepare. You've said that you want the uniqueness, you want it to be safe and resilient for multiple generations to benefit from. You want to make sure you have the input from the people. You can replenish and come back when the waves crash upon you and you need to rebuild a little. And we're all in it together, smooth sailing for the council as a team to plan forward. So just keep our sandcastle metaphor in mind as we're going through the retreat. With that, we're going to jump right into one of those big discussions about the ITA, and Deputy Manager Amanda Jarrett's going to come up.
And Mr. Mayor, members of council, council's had a lot of detailed and robust conversation on the ITA and where we're going next with that. The goal of this presentation is not to go over all the information that was previously discussed and presented to council. Really what Amanda is going to do is give you a quick, succinct overview of the prevailing issues and really the decision points that we hope council would have a conversation on, so you all can give us guidance as it relates to what do you all want us to do next as it relates to the ITA. So we'll be here to answer any questions that the council has, but when you see this presentation, it's not going to be a full, robust 60-slide presentation like you've received previously. It's probably going to be about 20 or so slides and really trying to get to the key decision points that we need council to have a deliberation on so that we can garner next steps in terms of how to go with the ITA.
All right, good morning, Mayor Dyer, Vice Mayor Wilson, members of City Council, Manager Duhaney, and the rest of the city team. As the manager stated, this will be a very high-level overview of a presentation that Ms. Warren gave to you back on July 8th. So this is not as robust, but is just meant to be a starting point for your discussions that you'll have later today. So we'll show you a few maps just to set the table about the existing conditions, and then we'll talk about the 3 proposals that have been briefed to you previously. The first being LIDA, the second being the sports tourism plan, and the third, a potential expansion of Innovation Park. And then following that, Julie and her team will walk you through a discussion, hopefully to provide direction to staff. And should we proceed with portions of the sports tourism plan? Should the ITA plan be amended to allow for industrial expansion? And which steps is the City Council directing staff to move forward with? So again, here's a map just to show you the geography of the area that we're discussing. The ITA is the area between Oceana and Fentress. This area here, you can see the green line at the top, the blue line at the bottom, and then the yellow highlighted areas are city-owned property. In the current draft of the comprehensive plan, there's been 2 names that have been discussed for this area. One is the green line context area. The other is the courthouse context area. And so that name of this area is under discussion by the Planning Commission now. Again, this is a larger map without the highlighted city-owned property that shows you the green line at the top, the blue line at the bottom, and it's important to note that utilities do not extend below the blue line. So first, the Law Enforcement Training Academy. I won't spend a ton of time on this, but again, as background and existing condition, it's currently located on Bird Neck Road in a former school facility that has as well past its useful life. And so council has been working with the team to identify a future location for LIDA. The council did give direction to staff in March of this year to pursue location of the LIDA in the ITA. Design funding has already been approved by council and is in the current budget. So Area 6 of the ITA master plan that exists today does identify that area for municipal uses, and so that has been the area that Public Works has focused on when they are looking to locate LIDA in the ITA. The estimate of 82+ million does not include site development. It's only the construction of the facilities necessary for a LIDA. The size of that site would be approximately 10 acres. So sports tourism, you've received several briefings from Parks and Recreation related to a plan for sports tourism in the ITA. Your existing conditions you can see listed here. There's a variety of sports and athletic complexes there today. You've got the Princess Anne Athletic Complex, the Virginia Beach Sportsplex, field hockey facilities, and the Virginia Beach Field House. And so Parks and Rec put together a sports tourism expansion proposal to be located in the ITA that would add baseball facilities, pickleball facilities, cross-country trails, bike trails, a way to enjoy both actively and passively the area in the ITA. The estimate for that build-out, as noted in the previous presentation, was $161 million, but I'll show you later how that's broken out, and there's various phases that the council could choose from if you wanted to implement some portions of the sports tourism plan. I will note that these costs do not include roadway expansion costs of Lansdowne Road, should that be necessary. So here's a breakout, and again, this is just very high level, but when Parks and Rec put together their plan, there were various areas. There are some that are more infrastructure heavy, and I'm sorry the bottom of that's cut off, but you should have a hard copy in your package. And then there's some that are more passive that could be implemented at a much lower cost. And so then lastly, for consideration, is an expansion of Innovation Park. Here's the existing condition of that business park now. As you'll note, we did announce several weeks ago the expansion of acoustical sheet metal, which leaves just over 10 acres of property remaining. It was 150 acres of industrial zoning. You've got acoustical sheet metal phases 1 and 2. Phases 3 and 4 were just announced. There's been over $22 million in infrastructure invested to date. AGI is in the process of constructing their facility within the park, and there's just over 380 jobs there to date. And so VBDA works with their engineer to put together 2 potential expansion plans. It's a 25-year master plan that includes roadway extensions, stormwater facilities, and expansion of industrial property. One of their proposed plans was just to simply extend the Hudum Way cul-de-sac and expand the BMP that would add just under 30 acres of additional industrial property. And then there was a much more comprehensive plan that was put together and included again in the July 8th presentation for you that extended the road network more significantly. Both of these would require amendments to the ITA plan, rezoning applications. This cost was more at the $30 million level, but again, these are all very high-level costs and unanticipated conditions could be discovered. So all 3 proposals can be accommodated from a land perspective. And so what we're asking for you all today is to give us direction on which of these would you like us to pursue. Council has previously given direction on the LIDA, but we are looking for your discussion and direction related to implementation of sports tourism and any potential expansion of Innovation Park. And so here's some thoughts for discussion and direction that Julie, again, will expand on. But should staff proceed with implementation of portions of the sports tourism plan? Again, it was broken out initially in 4 various phases or components that we could pick from. Should we conduct an economic impact study to truly look at the economic impact of sports tourism in Virginia Beach, which is something that we invest in and previously had the Victus study done, which shows that sports tourism is an economic engine for Virginia Beach. Funding was included in the FY26 budget to pursue some of these things, and then it was directed to us to not proceed until we received further direction from you all. But there was some preliminary funding included in the FY25-26 budget. Should we put together a funding plan for some of the less costly items to include the tree planting, the 5K route, the cross-country course, things that would be less impactful and not require as much of an infrastructure investment. It is important to note that some version of road improvements would have to be put into place, but there would be more staff work that would need to be done, the extent and the cost of the road work that would have to be done. Another question for your consideration today is, should the ITA plan be amended to potentially accommodate some version of expansion of Innovation Park? Should we do an economic impact study to show whether that the value of the industry and the jobs and the wages that the potential announcements would create are truly impactful to the city of Virginia Beach economy? And then if we were going to go that route, what's the level of comfort with doing the smaller expansion, just extending the cul-de-sac of Hudom Way, or a more larger expansion down into the ITA? Again, this would require amendment of the ITA plan and then a rezoning action from the body. And at that point, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I will turn it over to Julia if there are none to walk you through the discussion.
Any questions? Touch.
Amanda, I have two quick questions. One is, I heard you say something that I think we all should pay attention to here, is that, and I just want to make sure and reiterate it, that you said that all three things are possible in this area, right?
So the area in total is 4,400 acres.
Right.
Staff worked with our Public Works Department, GIS, and planning to look at the various layouts. Now, it would cause some of the original locations from the sports tours and plan to shift, but they can all be accommodated. What we would like to know is direction on which of or all would you like us to pursue.
But the good thing is that what I'm trying to push home here is that it looks like we can have our cake and eat it too. It just might be a little different flavor than what we originally thought.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that you worked with, you just named, part of my second question was the departments that have looked at this. That wasn't an all extensive list you just gave, that was a partial.
No, sir. So we've all gotten together in a room to look at the various plans and to make sure that we were not operating in silos,
Right.
because that wouldn't be beneficial to anyone. It just does come down to a policy decision of what does
Yep.
the council value and want to invest in. But we can make them all work, and they're all valuable aspects to the city. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, it was a good presentation.
Okay, Barbara.
Well, I have such a long history with this, I can't begin to tell you what I know. It goes back to this report, which is a policy report done in 2001, presenting the athletic village. This is where it all started, and this is before BRAC. This was when we had first purchased the first property in this area, which was the Lake Ridge property, and what we were going to do with it. So this athletic village concept goes back a long way, and I would be tickled to death to make copies of this for anybody who would read it, because this has been our plan for 3 decades, and we're only scratching the surface here. And I just have to say that I think Uncle Sam did us the biggest favor we could have possibly had when they said that there could be no residential in the ITA. Of course, they were talking about the noise problem, but one of the things that we have found out, and this was before Matthew and before Dewberry, was that this area is extremely poorly drained. Historically, this was a series of swamps across there from Dismal Swamp to Holland Swamp. We still have the Gum Swamp in place there. This land is poorly drained soils, high water table, and the drainage issues are tremendous. So that's the first thing we have to start with. If we had gone forward with that original plan to do residential in this area, Windsor Woods and Asheville Park would look like a picnic. We would have an area that was full of flooded houses. So before we start planning what we're going to do in here, we better look at this issue of what the land is like and what is best for the land. And I hope all of you have read, this area has been extensively studied. We had 2 very complete ITA plans done that looked at all of this before Matthew and told us that what this area was like and told us what the right thing is for this area. And we're ignoring all of this. And, you know, we can't just, I don't think we can come in and just today say, oh, this is what we want to be. I think we need to look at what we know from all of the studies that we have done And to think that we might think we've got to restudy the whole thing, we know this area probably better than any area that's been studied anywhere in the city. No, it's not right for residential for many reasons. Uncle Sam didn't take away this property from us. It was taken away with the soil types. And what we do with it is going to determine what it's going to cost us. To say 5 million or 20 million, that doesn't touch it. Because to start with, and even if you look at the innovation plan the VBDA came up with, the first thing you've got to do is dig 163 acres of stormwater ponds, lakes, because of the poorly drained soil. And they have that right on their plan, plus another 55 acres that's wetlands that you couldn't begin to touch. So you've got a third of the property that you've got to set aside to deal with the type of soil that's there before you even start doing anything industrial.
If we could wrap up. and
Okay,
go to
I know
point.
you don't want to begin to hear, but you better look at all of this stuff before we make any decisions.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Jen? And then Ward.
Yeah, I did actually hear from a resident about light industrial use in the area. And with our existing spaces for light industrial use, are they all utilized? So in other words, are we expanding or looking for more space for light industrial where we still have existing availability in current industrial areas?
Yes, ma'am. So we're actively marketing the remaining space in Innovation Park as well as property that's held by VBDA and Corporate Landing. And then again, work with the broker community, the Hampton Roads Alliance and the state to actively market the existing remaining industrial property. Yes, we are continuing down that path. We are unable to respond to, they call them RFIs, requests for information, that come in when there's a project considering the community and the region. So some we're unable to respond to because of the property size, or they don't match our strategic target industries. But we are still marketing the properties that we do have available. Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Rouse, just want to add extra clarity. Amanda, from my recollection, there's 51 acres available in Corporate Landing.
Correct.
And 10 acres remaining in
Innovation Park. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So those are the industrial or light industrial properties that's in the city's hands currently, like VBDA's hands. There's others, maybe sparsely, that's like maybe in control of the private sector, but for the VBDA directly controls 51 and at Corporate Landing and 10 at Innovation Park. Is that accurate?
That's correct. And the 51 acres in Corporate Landing aren't contiguous. They're spread across 7 parcels.
Okay, we'll go Worth and Michael.
Thank you,
And
Mayor. I
Josh.
do have a couple of questions just to clarify. So if you said 4,400 acres in the ITA. How much approximation is the Parks and Rec plan for sports tourism, and how much for the expansion of Innovation Park? And so therefore, what would be left of the 4,400?
I can provide you that detailed breakdown as a follow-up. I wouldn't want to misspeak, but I can provide you that breakdown regarding the Parks and Rec plan and the expansion of Innovation Park. Yes, sir.
But suffice it to say, maybe half or a good chunk of the ITA would be untouched if we did both plans.
So there would still be remaining property in the area. It would be much less if you went with that larger VBDA plan, that 25-year plan. That would be more consuming. So I would say it would move you into a majority of being occupied. But you do have those choices.
Okay. And then just back to the question that Councilwoman Rouse just said, for the industrial market, there's a 7% vacancy today. This is what I do professionally. So of the land that's available, the 51 acres in Corporate Landing, that's really designated as an office park. I mean, I don't believe there's any industrial. There might be an overhead door, but it's really no manufacturing, as the covenants and restrictions don't allow really overhead doors or materials. It's really an office park. So it's really limited to Innovation Park. And Innovation Park, there's 2 sites, and one of those does not have infrastructure. So it's really one site, and then maybe some small amount of land in the private sector. So it's very sparse, if that.
Yes, sir. So Corporate Landing does have design guidelines that were imposed on the park, which very much restrict the type of use and the activities that can be conducted in that park. It does lean more towards very light industrial and or office park. With regards to 2 of the parcels in an Innovation Park, the cost to extend utilities to those parcels have been cost prohibitive to several of the prospects that have looked at that park, those parcels. It was over $1 million to extend water and sewer to that site. And so when looking at the required investment by the company in addition to site acquisition costs and then their development costs, it has made it difficult to market that site.
Okay, Michael, and then Josh.
Thank you. I have a few questions, but some of them have been answered. I just want to maybe just emphasize a little bit. So what I heard you say was that there are 51 acres remaining in corporate landing, but not contiguous.
Correct. It's spread across 7 parcels. Yes, sir.
And so there's limitations to what use could be placed in what area based on that limitation and based on that dispersion.
Yes, sir.
Correct. Does that 51 acres include the site HRT has contemplated for their use?
Yes, sir.
It does.
Yes.
So it's inclusive of that. And there's 10 acres left at Innovation Park.
Yes, sir.
And are those 10 acres contiguous?
No, sir.
They're not contiguous. So what would happen to our economic development, not the authority, but to the department's operations if there were, well, given the limitations you have currently, and if those limitations become further exacerbated by lack of open space for economic development use, what position would that put the city of Virginia Beach in terms of our economic development initiatives?
So we have a strategic plan that the Economic Development Department has put together, which identifies target industries and our key industry sectors in the city. Dependent upon the direction of City Council, we would work to revise that plan. We would pivot. We would focus more on redevelopment based on the property and the area available to us. Focus would shift to the SGA areas, as is already a focus. But we would reanalyze our target industry sectors and make sure that they were in alignment with what was available in the city and the direction of council.
Thank you. And the ITA, just for clarification, I want to make sure that we draw this out. What does ITA stand for?
I'm going to say it wrong. It's the interfacility traffic area. Yes, sir.
Interfacility traffic area. And what exactly does that mean in terms of what traffic, which facilities?
So as I understand it, this was the area that was between Fentress and Chesapeake and Oceana in the city of Virginia Beach, and was identified as areas that had significant flight from the 2 military bases and have 2 of the highest noise zones, which limit and restrict the types of development that we can have in that area. So as was mentioned earlier, no residential, and so those would be areas for types of development that you're considering today.
Thank you. So any type of development that would be contemplated well, let me go back. So when the ITA was established, do you recall what year? It was in response to the BRAC, so it had to be post-2006.
Yes, I will follow up with that exact year, but I understand it was triggered by conversations related to BRAC and the possible loss of the investment at Oceana.
That is correct.
So the intent, so you were on council then at the time, Mayor. So the intent of establishing the ITA was to preserve the operations and the presence of NAS Oceana within the city of Virginia Beach. Was it contemplated at the time, and Mayor, I welcome your thoughts on this since you were here, was it contemplated at the time, and also Vice Mayor, that there would not be a use of that property at the time, or that the uses would be compatible with an acceptable use by the Navy?
As I understand it, oh, sorry, Mayor.
Yeah, basically, it was accepted. Nothing goes there without the okay for the Navy. It has to be a compatible use. And correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, that a lot of the ITA was determined because of flight operations where they used Fentress Field as a touch-and-go landing area. And the truth be told, it's my understanding from reliable sources that the Navy is pursuing pilotless aircraft. And therefore, if that evolution does occur, and it is on the drawing board, that touch-and-go areas at Fentress would not be necessary anymore.
Thank you, and I'm probably running up on my time. I don't know if the timer's, I am? Did my time go?
I haven't been using the
Okay.
timer, but yeah.
Well, I'll make it,
I'm gonna start.
I'll wrap it up, but, so the intent was to ensure that the Navy's presence remained and that any use contemplated would be compatible with the Navy's operations, but not that there would be no use or that property would be preserved in a way that it would be untouched, right?
Correct. And then an ITA master plan was done in 2017 that would, at that point, outline suggested uses within that area.
Thank you. That's a perfect segue to my last and final question, which is that there would be, there were municipal uses contemplated at that time. Can you recall what those municipal uses were, or would you mind sharing that with us?
So I know that there's a chapter, an area outlined in the plan that goes into details related to those municipal uses, and Area 6 was the area initially identified for those. I understand like municipal offices, training facilities would all be considered acceptable uses as I understand it.
Municipal offices, training facilities, and I believe a waste transfer station was contemplated at one time.
I believe there was a waste transfer
Or
station.
designated for that space. But we're not currently, we have no current plans for a waste transfer station, although that was part of the adopted plan that was created in 2017, correct?
Yes, sir. So I believe it was included in the plan, and I'm not aware of any active discussions related to a waste facility.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're going to go with Josh and Stacy.
And Mayor, I just want to remind everyone of our purpose for the discussion. We want to clarify any questions with Amanda. We also want to get to giving staff direction on next steps. It's not necessarily final decisions, but if we're pursuing a next step, what next steps are you comfortable with? So that's where we're going to be getting to.
Okay, let's finish up with Josh and Stacy. Be succinct, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is just questions for Amanda, and then we can discuss later, right? Okay. The 163 acres that was mentioned on that slide, I think 16 it was, the stormwater facilities, out of how many acres total is that? So 163 of what?
So this is a breakdown that was provided from the VBDA engineer, which was looking at a total area of just under 400 acres.
So
As I understand it.
400 acres, okay. And do those stormwater facilities don't necessarily just include BMP? Is there other things like underground storage or whatever?
Correct, and that would be dependent on what the ultimate use was in that area and how impervious the surface was. Again, this was all done at a very high level just to show what could work.
Sure. My last question is on slide 21, where you're talking about discussion and direction forward, and whether we should conduct economic impact study, and whether the ITA plan should be.
Can we save that for our final discussion?
Well, no, I'm just wondering, does the ITA plan actually have to be, can we do the economic impact study first before we decide whether or not to amend the plan?
Absolutely. That phase or order of next steps is certainly council's direction
Thank
to
you.
us.
Stacy.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. As a result of the BRAC hearings and actions that were taken, there were other areas that were affected where land use was restricted besides the ITA, several neighborhoods and areas around Oceana. Do you have any idea how many acres were taken out of or were restricted as a result of that outside of the ITA?
I can follow up with you on that
Safe
number.
to say hundreds of acres?
I
Maybe
would-
thousands?
I would say several hundred, approaching thousands. Yes, sir.
So it's not just the ITA that was restricted, it's
No, sir.
a lot of area around the city.
Correct, to prevent additional residential development and density in proximity to the base. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do you have something? Okay. So, thank you, Amanda. we want to start figuring out what kind of direction you want to give to staff. And what's been presented as sports tourism as an option, Innovation Park expansion as an option. You already in March gave staff direction to start pursuing LIDA. And then we've got space for whatever is on your mind. So I'm just going to use this as a starting point with LIDA back in March when you all heard discussions about LIDA. Next steps that were already completed. There were meetings with stakeholders, concept development, reviewing the concept with the city manager. And then back in March, it was reviewing the concept with council. So staff received the direction at that time to proceed to design concept revisions. And then at some point, there would be construction funding, or there would be construction. You also, in your budget this year, created the major project fund. So that was one of the projects that could be funded out of that, but it's ultimately a council decision. So this is kind of the direction that staff is proceeding on based on the discussion in March.
So just to clarify with that, in March, council landed on LIDA going into ITA. Council approved around $9-point-something million in the budget that you passed in July 1 for design services for the new LIDA facility. We're starting the procurement process. A design firm hasn't been selected yet. So it's not poured in concrete, but we're going on the trajectory, on the path that you all set us on in March. So if we're to diverge from that, we need to diverge from that pretty soon, because with the intent of the design would be for the design of the ITA, LIDA in the ITA facility.
So with sports tourism, some of the sort of high-level next steps that Deputy Manager Jarrett just talked about in the last 2 pages of your presentation, some of the potential next steps would be to conduct a feasibility and economic impact study, have it as a budget discussion topic, get public comment and feedback. There were several small incremental steps toward implementation that were listed, so you could look at starting some of those small steps. And then there's other CIP components related to road network, to have a road so that all the people coming in for the sports tourism events could do that. So those are some of the next steps in Innovation Park expansion. There's also a potential next step of conducting a feasibility and an economic impact study to see how that would impact the city's revenues, amend the ITA master plan. There's also CIP-related components. There's other potential steps here. So where I'm hoping to get you all to give staff direction is eventually tell us how far in these steps and what other steps you would want to take to move forward with any of these. And so that's where I want you to have some discussion about what are the potential next steps. Ultimately, after your discussion, I'm going to have you come up and put some dots on how far you're comfortable. Should we be pursuing this? And if so, I'm good to go this far. I'm good to go this far. And you'll be dotting some of these different items to talk about how far you're comfortable going.
Okay, Barbara, you had a question?
When are we going to have a public hearing so the public can comment on all of this? This innovation plan thing came up as a surprise to everybody, in my district anyway, and that's the district it's in. And there's been no public hearing, and the public has not had any input. And I don't remember that we made firm that we wanted LIDA in the ITA.
Yes, we did,
because
Mrs. Henley.
I would like a transcript of that discussion. I think we were still considering the site on Bird Neck, and we said, let's look at both of them.
That was eliminated, Mrs. Henley.
I guess I missed that day, and I didn't realize I missed it. I'd like to have that transcript. But I think the people who live there have an opportunity to have some input. When can we have a public hearing, especially on the Innovation Park expansion, because that's had no public comment at all?
Okay, if I could just say this in time. You know, if we go with the direction of doing a feasibility study for the sports tourism and innovation park, I would assume the public hearing would be engaged at that point once we get all the definite information first. It's not prudent to have a public hearing until we get the definite information about that. So if we decide to go forward, be assured public input will be part of it. Okay, go ahead and move on, Julie.
Mr. Mayor, I want to add to what you said, Mayor. If the council, so sports tourism, depending on if council wants to incorporate the innovation park into the ITA or an expansion of the innovation park in ITA, that would need to shift the current ITA plan that you have, right? If council authorizes that, there's already several built-in public comment, public briefing, ITA committee, planning commission briefings, and the public comments and the public hearings associated with that. Then there's also the public hearing process that will come to city council after it finishes the ITA committee, the planning commission, and the city council process. Then the public comment process when you guys take it up for vote. So really, if you all give us a direction to expand Innovation Park in the ITA, the process of amending the plan and then the rezoning on top of that as well is already going to bring in several points for public comment, discussion, and public hearings and deliberation and a public vote. So none of this can be done without significant public feedback and definitely a public vote to set the new policy if you all go in that direction.
Okay, I'm going to go with Jen, and then we're quickly, and then we'll get to the exercise.
Well, this is part of it, listening to everything, and I have the comprehensive plan here, so flipping through as we're talking. So I'm just thinking out loud. I'm wondering whether or not, in terms of light industrial, if we're running out of space, has that type of economic development sort of met its natural end? And by that I mean, if there's opportunity for SGA, so there's room for redevelopment, infill development that's part of our existing comprehensive plan, is it time to pivot because we are running out of space for that kind of use? And I ask that question because I'm looking at our existing comprehensive plan, and in the courthouse planning area, transition area section, there is language for update the plan to ensure a balance between recreation, sports tourism, existing business expansion, city facilities, agricultural growth in this area. But so much of it is about preserving space. So much of it is about preserving and improving flooding resiliency. So my concern is, in terms of next steps, how do we pursue development while also preserving reducing sea level rise and flooding concerns and issues? And if we're thinking about economic development, in what way does sports tourism meet the need of economic development? So does it have to be economic development in all these directions? Or if there's not a natural fit for Innovation Park to be expanded in this area, does that then mean that there is no economic development if instead we emphasize sports tourism?
I think that'll be part of the discussions going forward. Okay, go ahead, Julie.
Well, so I want to make sure, are there other potential next steps you all see that aren't up here? You know, so conducting a feasibility study, thinking about funding, having public comment. Are there some of those small steps that you would want to start pursuing? And road network, want to start planning that? Are there other steps along sports tourism as potential next steps you would be ready to give some direction to? Same with Innovation Park. Are there steps that you're ready to give a correct direction to? Are there things you have questions about, something that's missing, before I ask you to tell me whether or not you're good with moving forward with some of these steps?
Is there an understanding that going forward that it would be a progression? In other words, one-to-one, once accomplished, and then an automatic progression going forward. But the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And, the thing is that in that way we have actually facts to determine if we want to go on to the next step. But, I think this is a logical sequence of, what we can do to get to where we need to be.
What are you going to say, Billy? No. The one I personally am not sure is in the right order is some of these small incremental steps that were listed. I think some of those are small enough that you all might be comfortable pursuing some of them before doing some of these bigger studies. And I'm getting some nods.
Yeah,
So that's one
worse.
question.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. We know we already have a lot of the studies, Victus study, as Mrs. Henley pointed out, studies of the ITA previous. And a lot of this costs money and time. And at this point, because this is very, very high level, I would rely on staff, Public Works, Economic Development, the city manager, public utilities to give us some high-level costs that guide us, and so we don't get yet another study, because it does cost money and it takes time. I think we can rely on staff's opinions and guidance.
Patrick?
So we have given you high-level cost, right? So to do what we projected as part of the Parks and Rec plan that council asked for in the 24-25 reconciliation was the low-hanging fruit, right? The cost to do some of the 5K cross-country trails and then the nature trails and some of the bike trails was around $1.5 to $2 million in fiscal year 24-25, right? We did give you a cost estimate for what it would do to economic impact study. Victus study did recommend that sports tourism, is a significant opportunity for the city of Virginia Beach. It did suggest that we further study it to get a sense of, in this area, where would the tax revenues go, right? Because of where it's located, some of its significant portion will probably be in Virginia Beach, but a good portion may go to Chesapeake, so that's why they asked us to evaluate it further. We have given you a general rough order of magnitude of $161 million, but the caveat we always said was not all of that cost has to be borne by the city of Virginia Beach. For example, what's going on now in the Princess Anne Athletic area, most of those things are done by the private sector, right? The city may do the infrastructure work, we may do some of the courses and stuff like that, but like ball fields and stuff like that, a private operator may come and pay for all of the field development or a portion of the field development, right? So that's the general exploration that we can go towards depending on where council wants to go. So like we could move forward, as Julie kind of implemented, with direction to start to explore a feasibility study or to do some of the low-hanging small projects, and then that'll give staff direction to come up with a plan as part of the budget process to try to find $1.5 to $2 million to do some of the courses and the trails and stuff like that, while at the same time we do a feasibility study on how we could do the whole thing, what the revenues would look like, and is there any particular target markets we should go to? Like, should it be BMX facilities? Should it be ball fields? Should it be pickleball or things like that?
Okay. Julie?
Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do, and I want to make sure you feel like you have enough information to do it, is to take the sheet of green dots you have in your...
I do want to say something, though, just for the council's awareness on it, right? We could do those things, but just remember the other context of that as well is that if we're doing something significant with sports tourism or doing something significant for Innovation Park, there's that CIP component associated with it, right? The big CIP component is if you do the full 400 acres for Innovation Park expansion, right? We think that's about $25 to $30 million. There is a CIP component associated with the sports tourism, because right now, if you are bringing that many people in, that's going to come for sports tourism, our residents, and then, if we're bringing in tournaments and stuff like that, there is some work that's going to happen with Lansdowne that we'd have to plan out as part of the budget process as well. So we don't get away from that component, right? But we don't necessarily anticipate that's a decision that's going to need to be made today. Obviously, if we get the direction, we'll work on a plan as part of the budget process to present to you all these things, and then if it doesn't make sense at that time, council could then give direction to do something different based on your other budget priorities.
Rosemary?
Just wanted to say that in relation to Innovation Park, just like you were saying there, the private sector may come in and pay for some of the things in the sports tourism. Innovation Park is also, there's parcels that can be sold, so there'll be money coming in from that. But we could also create, like we have the town center, an SSD type of thing to help pay for the infrastructure and the maintenance. So it's not all going to be on the cities if we decide to do something like that. But there's a lot of land there, and it just seems like we're plotting not just the next 12 months, but really the next 25 years. And we've got to think about, you want to play, but you also have to work. And we're going to have a place to have jobs to come in. And right now, we're having a hard time getting an economic development director because there's not enough land for him or her to market. So this is a very futuristic discussion that we've got to have, that we've got to be thinking about, not just what we're doing today and what's going to happen the next 20, 25 years.
Thank you, well said. Okay, Jen?
Just to clarify, there's, under sports tourism, it says consideration for small incremental steps toward. Is there an example of that, or just we're considering? What are the steps?
So the small incremental steps would kind of be the low-hanging fruit. Is somebody here from planning for Parks and Rec?
And some of the examples are on slide
Yep.
21.
So, Michael, can you come and explain to the city council the low-hanging fruit? So, remember when we presented this, council asked for us to come back with low-hanging fruit, right? Part of low-hanging fruit was the feasibility study, but then also courses and trails and cross-country. And that number for those things was about 1.5 to 2 million in fiscal year 24-25, right? So, Michael, can you explain to the council again what's in that small incremental focusing on the trails and the other things that you and Chad put together?
Sure. So what we looked at was some of the very large ticket items, the 12, 15 baseball field complex that's going to be in the tens of millions. That's long-term partnerships in the future. But we looked at what could we do for lower costs, immediate, to make some improvements out there. One was a practice course at the existing pack, going over the culverts. The 5K course, we had a 3, 5, 10K course. That would be a couple million. We had nature trails through the south. So all those things are 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, 5 mil or less. We looked at disc golf out at Pack. These were smaller cost, smaller impact steps. And then we looked at an economic impact study for things like the baseball complex or the big BMX facility, those other action sport amenities we considered at the site.
Mr. Kirchman, I'm going to have you follow this up, or maybe Mr. Duhaney. I have a question about the sports tourism, because we've heard about the soil quality, stormwater. For the purposes of that discussion, how does when you talk about fields, are those compatible with this? In other words, it's the same sort of impact as other types of development that you have impervious surfaces or manicured such that it still creates stormwater challenges. In other words, how is the stormwater impact on some of those things different than other types of development?
I'll start. I'll start. Councilmember Bellucci, it's some of the impact, but depending on how you engineer and structure the fields, it'll be less of an impact and less costly than it would be for light industrial, right? Because you're going to probably if you're doing ball fields, if you're doing grass, you can accommodate some of that. And some of these things are built to allow for when they're flooding, you're not using it, then it goes down and recedes, but the trails and stuff like that are still maintained. So it probably, and a lot of this is the reason why the current ITA plan is the way it's set up. It's taken into account the poorly drained soils. It's the reason why there's such a heavy emphasis on active and passive recreation there, and it's also the reason why the light industrial build out is so significant from a dollar standpoint, because you need to accommodate for those drainage issues that's in the ITA. So it's probably an easier path to do trails and ball fields, because it'll lead to less impervious than, say, if you were to, what no one's asking for. No one's asking for this to industrialize the whole thing, right? Michael, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
And I have
That's
a
perfect.
follow-up, but, okay. Let's talk about operational, because currently the ball fields that are there are managed by Parks and Rec. And are there travel teams using it, and how often do they use it? And I know, off the top of your head, I'm not asking for a specific report.
PAC is pretty much uses tourism pretty much every weekend during the peak season. I think we do 1 or 2 open weekends this entire year.
What's the peak season?
April through October, 6 months.
And how is your staffing at those sites and others?
Fairly good. We struggle with part-time, certainly, but full-time is good.
And Mr. Bellucci, I'll add as well, depending on the feasibility study, I don't think our model, and Michael, speak freely, I don't think if the council was to move towards exploring ball fields and things like that, our model wouldn't necessarily be to add more staff. Our model would be there are entities kind of like the Sportsplex that's operated and managed by a different group. The Field House is operated and managed by a different group. They're entities that are in this business, similar to what we're doing at the Sports Center with SFC, that do this, right? That's some of the things that we could explore as part of the different studies, is how best to go about this. We're not necessarily of the mindset that we would be asking for an expansion of the sports facility group inside Parks and Recreation. They got enough work maintaining the PAC and keeping it at tournament level and doing the rest of the city's resources. The goal would be, if council is interested in that, to see if there's a private sector model that would be willing to come and take a lion's share of the operations and also a significant share of the CIP build out related with those things.
Okay, at this point, I think we can get to the exercise. Okay, Julie?
All right, so you all have a sheet of dots in front of you. I'm going to ask you to come up and place your dots first. Should we pursue? Put a dot here if you think we should pursue continuing to think about it. You're not committing to building it out. You're not committing exactly, but just generally, is this something we should pursue? And then a dot on the different big Post-its here. And they're roughly in order. And so if you want to pursue everything for sports tourism, I want to do some small steps, things like the trees or a practice course or trails. You would put a dot here. I also want to conduct a feasibility study. You put a dot here. I want to, at the CIP retreat, discuss funding. You'd put a dot here. I want public comment, and I want to think about road networks. You would put a dot on all of it. If you want to just stop here, I want to think about some small things, and I'm not ready to make a decision about anything else, you just put one dot. Does that make sense? So on all of these, on your big Post-its, put dots. I added a couple from where you were talking in the Innovation Park, seeking private partner funding, so actively pursuing private partner funding there. I guess that probably applies to everything, so I'm going to put it here. You could seek funding for tourism, for Innovation Park. Having a public hearing while it's embedded in a lot of these as a first step. And then throughout, I think I'd see 11 dots, but ensuring flood protection in whatever you do. So you're going to come up, dot here, and on as many of these as you want. Any questions?
How are we going to do this?
No, they're just got, no.
You all can,
Yeah, just, go
we're
ahead
going to
and
break
let's
after,
get started.
if that's okay.
Stacy and Jen, why don't you go ahead and get things started?
What if we run out of dots? I don't think you will unless you're cheating. Yeah, on the Post-its, on the big Post-its. Yeah. I can do your dots for you.
At some point. That's all right, don't worry. That's why I was asking how we going to do this.
We'll get it done.
Timothy's dedication and willing to do whatever you say.
We're going to talk about it and then close next Tuesday.
Okay. He says I need 3 people to get on the agenda to even talk.
I think everyone has placed their dots.
Okay, we'll talk about it later, but we're going to talk about it. Yeah, I told you to do a draft first for $10,000. Remember that?
Yeah, I thought you do a draft for higher than.
Well, let's.
So I'm going to quickly recap, tell you where your dots are to give staff direction, see if there's any final questions or comments about this, and then we'll take a break.
Okay.
So there's a couple extra dots here. There's 11 of you, so I'm just going to say someone slipped. But everyone is
Who
interested.
did the extra dots?
Everyone is interested in pursuing sports tourism in the ITA. Within that, there's interest in the incremental steps as well. That also got an extra vote. But everyone is interested in some of the small incremental steps in the ITA. So that would be giving direction to staff to come back to share what some of these small steps could be. Then for a feasibility and economic impact study for sports tourism, we've got 7 dots here. So the majority of you are ready to consider this, but not unanimous there.
Yep, Michael?
But I have to say this. If there's 14 dots and there's 11 of us, how can we rely that any of this distribution is representative of the will of the body?
Okay. Let's just, but
I mean,
Michael.
I hear you, but
yeah.
this is major direction, Mayor.
No, I understand that, but.
So we're providing direction based on a distribution of dots that no one really understands how they were
Yeah,
placed.
let's just say, Michael, it was just in one area, because I was standing there watching people put the dots on, and, let me put it this way, a few just popped up in that one area, so. Yeah, we gotta find a direction.
Mayor, I respect your point of view, and I respect that we have to find a direction. I just want to register my concern with that methodology.
Okay, yeah, I share it, Michael.
And I will generously interpret this as the direction that you're giving. This isn't a formal vote, but it's giving staff general direction about what you want to pursue, what you want them to be preparing for you. So with the recap, if anything is coming out like, holy cow, only one person voted, but there's 7 dots up there, we need to hear it. So a lot of interest in small incremental steps, some interest in a feasibility or economic impact study about sports tourism, 8 dots here on discussing at the next budget retreat how we would fund some of the sports tourism, so trying to think about a plan for it. 5 dots for public comment, and 7 dots for CIP-related components for the road network. If I were sitting right here, my interpretation is the council wants us to continue to pursue sports tourism as a use of the ITA and take some small steps and start planning.
I would also clarify to the council that all of these things still have to come back to you all for voting consideration some way, shape, or form, because we don't have any money to do any of the consideration of the small incremental steps to, for the cross country, the practice course, the nature trails. We have to come back to you all for that. As it relates to the road networks and stuff like that, we would still have to come back to you all, and that'll probably be a part of the budget retreat where we can have that conversation. We do have funding for the feasibility study. What I would suggest with that is that we would work on a scope, and we would share that scope with City Council to kind of make sure we're hitting all the areas that you want us to do further study on, and then you will give us authorization to proceed with an RFP to get a firm, or we can use Victus, who we currently have under contract, or a firm like that, right? So you're not nothing that you're telling us right now is poured in concrete, right? But we're just getting a general sense that there is generally overwhelmingly majority agreement that we further explore this sports tourism concept in the ITA. Okay.
Okay, and let me just, appreciating Mr. Bellucci's concern, does anybody disagree with the outcome of this particular one? And then I'll ask the same question for each one. Does anybody disagree with the results of this? Okay?
All right. So then Innovation Park expansion has 8 dots on yes, we should pursue. So this looks unanimous. This is a majority, but not unanimous. 3 dots on conducting a feasibility or economic impact study for the expansion. 6 dots for amending the master plan with public comment and considering rezoning. And 5 dots for discussing the CIP-related components on the road network. So again, my interpretation is a majority is interested in still continuing to talk about this, but we're a little slower in what we want to do than sports tourism. Is that how you?
With this one, I'm not sure how to proceed, Council. So it sounds like there's a majority of you all that want to pursue this, and it seems like what at least indicated here, at least 6 dots are there for amendment to the ITA and master plan. Not enough to consider this as part of the budget retreat, but is generally, Mr. Mayor, if I would ask the council, is there a general sense that you all want to explore this? And to me, if you're saying you want to explore this, it would be starting the process of amending the ITA plan.
Rosemary?
How many dots were on the
ITA plan?
budget CIP?
The budget CIP is 5.
Okay, I didn't put one there. I get tired of standing and so many people with my leg. So I did a very abbreviated version. So I would put a dot there if you would accept it.
Okay, Josh?
Mr. Mayor, and I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody, but like kind of as I'm looking at this, what this is saying to me is that it looks like we're interested in at least exploring everything a little bit, because what we don't know is what the estimated cost, the true drill down estimated cost of infrastructure. We don't know. I mean, we know sports tourism investment is going to involve, like you said, roads and buildings and bathrooms and parking lots and things, and even turf fields are impervious surface. So that's going to require some analysis. We don't know if there's public-private or private partners. We don't know what kind of uses might draw. We don't know where the hotel stays are going to be. I mean, same thing with Innovation Park. We don't know what the uses are. Bless you. We don't know. I mean, there's just tons. There's so much that we don't know that I think it's worth running down as much as we can so that we can it's tough to put a dot way far down line when we're not even anywhere close to it quite yet.
So, Mr. Mayor, I think the clarity I'm trying to get from the council is, and Councilmember Schoen, I do think you're onto something, But the clarity I want to get from you all is just the understanding that if we trigger this, we're triggering a process that's going to hit planning commission, that's going to come to you, that's going to get a good amount of public feedback, right? And I got no problem doing it, but just want to make sure that you all are aware if we go with this and say we start amending the ITA plan, we're literally going to be taking steps to get economic development, public works, parks and rec, to work on what we've been talking about here and bringing something to your appointed bodies and then ultimately to you all, sometime in the next 6 months, because I think it'll be maybe about a 4 to 6 month process to go through all the different public processes.
Let me say this. First of all, does everybody concur with the notion of at least moving forward? Okay, so we can all agree with that. But once again, Patrick, I think we have a lot of information on hand that you've already done. So, conducting maybe in kind of a formal feasibility study, I think we have enough information that if you can compile it, going forward, and that would facilitate amending the master plan part of it. So I would say by all means, once again, I think whether it be the sports tourism or the innovation park, put together the coherent details of what you've already have been doing over the past years, so we can start getting to a decision point. Does that make sense, Barbara?
The Innovation Park. When we were talking about Corporate Landing, it was mentioned that they have some very specific design guidelines and so forth. Well, so does Innovation Park. Remember, this started out to be the biomedical park, and that's when it got the I-1 rezoning. When we changed because it didn't work with biomedical, and all we did was said we can start looking at things beyond the medical because that didn't work. We have extensive design guidelines for this park as well, plus the promises that we made to the neighbors in that area. And that's why I'm so concerned about us getting this far without even letting any comment come in from those neighbors, because of what we promised when we allowed this to be, quote, the Innovation Park. There's a great background to this that I feel very responsible for as a district representative, because I told the folks, we're going to keep the design guidelines. It's going to be a lot like what we had planned with the biomedical park, which was to be a research park. It was to be campus-oriented, and what we're getting out there now is far from that. And that's my concern. And so when we talk about Innovation Park, please go back to the very beginning of the day when that property was rezoned and given to the Development Authority. It was to be something entirely different.
But be assured, as the city manager indicated, there will be significant public hearings on this once we get a concept and plan to talk about. Worth?
Thank you, Mayor Dyer. I just want to follow up because a little bit of history here. Again, as you know, I've been in the business. Oceana West Corporate Park, perhaps one of the best corporate parks in the whole region, home to Steele's North American headquarters, IMS Gear, advanced manufacturing, but 4- and 5-story Class A office buildings. So originally, Oceana West Corporate Park, which is Lynn Haven Parkway, including the mall, from Interstate 264. Beautiful, beautiful area, lots of great jobs. Originally, that was intended to be an industrial park that it morphed into an office park in the 80s and 90s as the office market developed. And again, a beautiful Class A office buildings, a great office and, of course, retail corridor as well with Lynn Haven Mall. So Oceana West Corporate Park originally was initially an industrial park that morphed into a commerce park of both office, industrial, and retail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Josh?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one thing as we're kind of evaluating this, I mean, a while back, I had asked, because I was wondering what our investment in sports tourism had been. And I know, because I know recently last year we did 19.5 million. And that was, it was 24 was when it was invested in. And it was, the HRSC got 10 million, Sportsplex got a little over 4 million, Sportsplex and field hockey. And then Princess Anne Athletic Complex got 3.26 million. So, you know, we hear from a lot of people around the city and sports tourism advocates who, you know, who are obviously supportive of our sports tourism and investments. And out of that 19.5 million, $17.4 million of that went to sports uses in the Princess Anne Commons area. So, then I asked another question about, okay, well, what's been our total investment in sports tourism? And inclusive of that 19.5 million, the total investment has been 69.5 million. But what's not included in that is the sports center, because the sports center is altogether different. And because we had that kind of unique situation, the operator and all of that. So the next question I asked was what revenue it had generated. And it's just real estate taxes and people and meals taxes. This is just straight tax revenue. It's no indirect, it's no induced, it's no hotel nights. It's, you know, I mean, so it was just really just tried to scrub just for the tax revenue. $315,000, a little north of that, a year revenue 1 year for just under, let's just call it a $50 million investment, plus the sports center, because the $20 million we just spent hasn't come into fruition. And I'll finish in just a sec. On the flip side of that, I wanted to know how much we invested in Innovation Park and what the return has been. And it's to date $22.4 roughly million invested in Innovation Park. But just for that $22.4 million, we get over $500,000 of real estate taxes for that. So for a third of the investment, we're making almost twice the return. And then not to mention the fact that the VVDA owns property and has sold property, so there's revenue from those transactions, which could total as much as $17 million. So I think we should do a little bit of all of it, but I think those are really important things to keep in mind as we, you know, evaluate. And we talk about return and economic impact and feasibility.
Okay, at this point, Patrick, do you have a direction that you can live with?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm getting a general sense that we'll pursue all of it, right? You know, basically what we're going to be working on right now is getting a general sense of what a feasibility study would look like. As part of the budget process, we'll contemplate small incremental steps like planting trees, the cross-country trails, practice courses, nature trails, and then talk to you more as the budget process on the rest of it. Similarly, for the Innovation Park, not hearing really a desire for economic impact study, but we'll pursue the process of thinking about what it would look like to amend the ITA plan and all the public processes associated with that, and then consider that as part of the CIP process as well.
Okay.
And then just, I don't know if we need to recap. Lita is continuing.
From what
Yeah.
I've got from council, we're keeping in line with the March 11th direction is we'll continue to process as if Lita's going into the ITA. And again, going through the design process, going through to secure the design firm. Nothing's poured in concrete yet, but once we secure that firm, we'll let you know, and then we'll be moving forward with design. And as LJ communicated to you when he briefed you in March, we will come back to council similar to what you all did with the Rudy Loop project to update you all on design and get further feedback and let you know how the project is progressing.
And then finally, I'd say these bottom three in pink are sort of principles the staff will keep in mind. We want public input, ensuring flood protection all the time, and continue to seek private partner funding.
Okay, great.
So with that, thank you for the direction. We're ready for a break. It is,
10 minutes?
I was going to give you 15.
15, okay, she's the boss. Okay, let's take a 15-minute break. A
So-
great conversation, folks.
10
Thank you all very much.
10:35.
You got it. You got some nice artwork.
We do. We've got, I didn't do this, I'll just say. We've got a good artist. We spent a lot of time with your staff thinking about what you've accomplished and how we could represent that to you. So we're shifting now away from the ITA. We're now in the looking a little back, looking at what's around us. What's our environment in Virginia Beach right now that can help set the stage for you setting your priority for the next 2 years? You are out talking to your constituents all the time. You're hearing what staff brings to you all the time. You know what's important to you, but we also want to make sure you're hearing some of the other context of the city to remind yourselves of the big picture, that citywide focus, before we shift into setting your priorities for the next 24 months. So we're going to start by looking back, and I'm going to walk you through what I'll say is a beautiful graphic of your accomplishments in the last 24 months. In your packet, you also have this FY 24-25 closeout report of accomplishments. So this has more detail definitely than what's up here. There are also some things that are highlighted on here that are not here. We got information about accomplishments when we spoke to all of you prior to the retreat, what you were proud of in the next 24 months. We also talked to the department directors about some of the successes that they've had in the last 24 months. So I'm going to start by walking you through 2 years ago, you set your intentions for what you wanted to focus on for 24 months. You then were delivered a report of your focused action plan with govern, envision, and invigorate as your priorities. Sticking with our sandcastle theme, we're building a lot of sandcastles, but there's also a lot of blank sand out there too. So not everything is done. There's a lot more building to be done. And there might be things that you hear that you want to put some caveats or amplify as we go through it. So I'll start in the govern section. So govern is the heart. That's the planning and starting of setting the vision and framework for how you operate the city. Some of the accomplishments that you've had in the past 2 years, you've done a lot of enhanced civic engagement and transparency. So you've had different public engagements and forums where you've brought more people from the community in to inform you before you're making decisions. The staff has been doing more of that as well. I think all of you mentioned to me that you're proud of the investments that you've made in your employees. Some of that is reflected in pay increases, other working conditions, but a big accomplishment, you know that your employees are at the heart of everything you do, and you need a good employee base to deliver well to your community. And so you as a council have invested in your employees. You've got strong financial management at the base of what you're doing. You've got your AAA bond rating. You've made other decisions like creating the Major Projects Fund. So you're making decisions to have that strong financial base for the future of your community. You've been modernizing city facilities and fleet. We've got City Hall here. You've been making improvements to the campus and around town and to the fleet to provide the basis for the services that your employees provide and that you provide out to the constituents. You've made different improvements around technology. We've just highlighted one, cybersecurity enhancements. That's a very behind-the-scenes thing that you don't pay attention. You might not pay attention to until you need to pay attention. So staff has been working, and you've allocated funding to be able to invest in cybersecurity to make sure that your data and your systems are safe. You adopted the 24-month focus action plan. So council has been having a lot more consensus in the last year, providing staff clear direction. So doing things like adopting the focus action plan and working well together has been helpful for staff to be able to know what direction to march in to execute on your vision. And finally, in the center here, you've maintained the lowest tax rate in Hampton Roads. And you all are very aware when I've been talking to you, and I'm sure as you talk to others, that you need to have that balance between having enough funding to provide the services that a world-class city provides and making sure that the tax rate is affordable for your residents and you're not pricing people out. So this is some of the highlights of what you've accomplished in the past 2 years in the govern category. So after we govern, we set the groundwork, we start envisioning, we're planning the community future. You have done a lot of work on the 2040 comprehensive plan. It's not complete yet, the draft is underway, but you've made a lot of progress. And so many of your decisions are about land use and how you're going to be using your land. That's the heart of planning for the community's future. Tied to that, the staff has developed a land use community engagement toolkit. I think it might not have been rolled out to council yet, but it's almost ready to be rolled out to council. But it's tying back to your desire for more civic engagement and transparency. It's helping developers understand how they can engage with the community as they're going through the planning process so that the community is involved earlier on. There's, in addition to the comprehensive plan, you've been developing and updating other plans. The transportation master plan was updated, and you've made a lot of progress on long-planned road improvements. It says Lynn Haven Parkway on the street sign. You had a ribbon cutting, I think, recently. So there's a lot of projects that take a lot of time to plan, and it takes time for you to see the results, but you all are laying the groundwork and seeing the results. You've had continued implementation of the flood protection program and stormwater master plans. So the bond referendum where you received funding, you're making progress on that. You know you face challenges with the amount of funding and changing costs, but you're continuing to pursue that so that flood protection is important throughout the city and making progress there. Affordable housing and has been important to all of you. It was one of your primary priorities 2 years ago. You've completed the housing study and you adopted the Attainable Workforce Housing Performance Grant. So you're making progress in this area as well. Staff has completed the inventory of city-owned parcels. That's something that you asked them to do to have a better understanding of what the city has control over as you're planning for the future. There's been customer service enhancements throughout a lot of city departments. I'll just leave it at that because I'll get lost in the details. But staff focuses on customer service improvements to make the government easier for residents to access. Continuing to work on environmental initiatives related to recycling and wind and solar, as well as efforts within city departments to promote resiliency and sustainability there. You've had some major employer announcements as well as some retention of small businesses. We've got a little Amazon logo. This is your sheet metal logo. Those are two that folks mentioned a lot when we were on the phone with you all. So bringing in new businesses to help bolster the tax base for the community. Over 11,000 acres are in the ARP now. And so while you're growing, you're also preserving your agriculture area. And then the SWAM, Small Women and Minority Business Program, exceeded the council aspirational goals in FY23 and 24. So trying to support all businesses. So after we envision, we invigorate, we govern, we envision, we invigorate. Some of your accomplishments there. There's been a number of initiatives to expand access to health and human services, and more are coming to be more accessible in the community. There's been proactive youth and school support from the council. Many of you mentioned schools in particular when you were talking about things that you're proud of, that while you are not the school board, you are proud that you're continuing to support the schools and recognize the schools are an important part of the community. You've made some big decisions about Rudy Loop Park, the design and public engagement, and moving forward with Rudy Loop Park. I think a decision was last week as well, so continuing to move forward. You have received several Safe City rankings from different rating groups across the country and continue to be on many of those lists. You have created sustainable arts and culture funding and programming with decisions made last year. This is a drawing of the lily and, I wrote it down somewhere, seagrass and lily sculpture that recently got unveiled by Sustainable Arts and Culture Funding and Program. There's been a lot of investment in a variety of parks and recreation and trails, including moving forward on the VB Trail. You've expanded library programming, so more access to libraries for the community. Continued emergency preparedness focus, so the focus on public safety continues. And finally, the opening of the Dome, really trying to make Virginia Beach a year-round destination. And so that's one of the efforts there. So when I look at this, I see a lot of progress. I see you've been building a lot of sandcastles and have a lot to be proud of. I'd ask you all just quickly, does something seem missing that you think is really important to call out that you've accomplished in the last 2 years? Any questions about any of these things? And again, there's a handout in your packet with more information.
Okay, comments or questions? Yeah, Josh.
Thank you very much for doing this, and the artwork is awesome. Is it one of your staff? Mm-hmm. Yeah, really nicely done. Just two things I saw, and it's probably the first one is probably under emergency preparedness, but compassionate billing, I think, was huge. And I see Chief Stroud, I think, back there somewhere. So, and just overall support for our public safety personnel. And then the other one I saw, and this is maybe a little bit nearer to ground, but not really, the major road projects finally out the door. So like Laskin Road, we got Shore Drive Phase 3 starting, Elbow Road is underway, and these grant-tied projects that free up, opportunities to seek other grant money later.
Okay, anyone else?
Yes.
Yeah, Amelia.
Thank you again for sharing that. What was important along with this was that attainable housing. Mm-hmm. We're already seeing the fruits of that, to hear the neighborhood, especially for District 4 yesterday, knowing there's this performance and their new development is coming up, 180 attainable housing. All of those have made a difference. The other part that I noticed was important was to do with the civic engagement. Mm-hmm. And community, so they feel they are included. Mm-hmm. And also that same-day access, because mental health is on the rise, but we are addressing that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Worth.
Thank you, Mayor Dyer. Thank you, Julie, for this summation. You know the city is really as well as almost our staff, so thank you. Just two additions. This council did increase funding to the arts from the TIP fund, from the admissions tax, 10% of that. I think that's a big step for the city. Also, this sounds dull, but is needed parking both at the oceanfront and at Town Center. We approved some initiatives for additional parking in both places, and a Central Beach master use plan next to the convention center. Thank you.
Great.
Michael?
Well, I appreciate Councilmember Remick bringing up the arts funding, because I think that is transformational, historic, and that direction was set at a previous retreat 2
years ago.
2 years ago. And so it's historic and meaningful, and we're already seeing many positive impacts come out of that. So thank you for raising that and elevating it. We also just received a report that I just want to talk about, or an update from our Parks and Rec Department, that 1.6 million people visited Mount Trashmore just within the last year, making it the most popular public space outside of the beach by far, where recreation, exercise, community, and many other things all come together. And I just want to just emphasize, as we're talking about developing new public spaces and new amenities, how important it is to celebrate the ones that we have that people really love, that fit just like an old shoe, and also make sure we take care of those.
You know, thank you. Just following up on what Michael said, I think it's very important that when we have these retreats, we see that positive action come as a result of it. And I think, Michael, you brought that up. And the other thing that is, really, very citizen-focused are the commitment to trails. Earlier, Stacy asked about, some of the other land outside of the ITA that was part of the BRAC. Right off Norfolk Avenue, and back a little bit in a private neighborhood, we had to buy some land there, and there's a 5-mile trail right smack in the middle of a neighborhood. And a lot of people don't know about it, but it's there. And I think a lot of the things, the accomplishments, are things that people may not see or observe. But definitely, the revitalization of what's going on in Mount Trashmore, and I think the other thing is the satisfaction survey, that was done. Hey, we're not a perfect city, but we're a darn good city, and I think that reflects in some of the accolades I get. But the thing is, I can tell you that the higher-ups in the Navy are very, very satisfied with the relationship that we have going on. We meet quarterly with Little Creek and Oceana, and we are kind of the template after we got put on the BRAC list on how a city should interact with an adjacent master jet base. And this is what they use. And, since we had the wake-up call with the BRAC, we have achieved some incredible results. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rosemary.
There have been a lot of great things said here, and I just wanted to add a little bit to it, especially with Aaron just coming last week, and the tide gates at Windsor Woods, and all of those things, the things that we've been putting in for the flood protection project, they're really starting to work now, and that program is moving forward. And it was supposed to be $567 million, and now it's at $1.3 billion. But with that, and also with the rising cost and inflation, we're still moving forward on things. We're finding ways to get there with extra grant money and that sort of thing. We've got some major road projects. Winston-Salem is well underway to be finished next year. And 17th Street's going to start in October. VB Trail is, I think, is a dream come true for a lot of folks. And Indian River Road, things are going to start happening on Indian River Road. So there's a lot of good things that we're able to push through in spite of the inflationary projects. Oh, and Elbow Road, that's another big one. So we're moving forward, and we're doing the best that we can with the resources that we have.
And Vice Mayor, you're moving forward even though things take a really long time. And so sometimes people in the community don't see the progress that you're making on these road projects, for example, because it takes so long to go through the process. But even in a 2-year time period, you can see that you're making progress.
And Patrick, don't we have Centerville 3 pretty much on cue?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that one is pretty much on cue. LJ, what's the timeline for construction on that one?
I believe we're going to bid by the end of the year, sir.
Okay.
You caught me flat-footed on that one.
I know, I saw it in your face.
But I believe we're going,
Night at the Improv.
I believe we're going to bid before the end of the year on that one, sir.
Okay. You know, that's another one long awaited, but we're getting there. Amelia?
Yes, the Cleveland Street, that is something we've been waiting, and that's, now on board for moving forward. So that's important, and also in the Pembroke to do with parking there. So these are opportunities now for people to be able to moving across. And the last thing about the micro transit that is important is working well for our city because mobility matters. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then just another reminder that we have, as a city, been very proactive. Homelessness affects every locality going. But I think we should all be proud of that we are proactive. Now, once again, there's their work to do. You better believe it. We're not there yet. But I'll tell you what, we are recognized in one of our accolades of being the most caring city in the nation. And I think a lot of it has to do not only with our nonprofits, but our significant outreach, to address the homeless situation and treat people with compassion and empathy. And I think that really helps define Virginia Beach. Barbara?
Just in looking at the resident survey, though, I know that we talk about the fact that we include the public, but this is one of the lowest points of the satisfaction rating. We only get 30.8% of people feel that they have an opportunity to participate in city development and city decision-making. So we might think we're giving people the opportunity, but they don't feel that. So how do we make the difference?
Yeah, you can make all sorts of efforts, but if they don't participate in them, they're not going to feel that they're involved. So you mentioned the resident survey. We're going to ask First Deputy Manager Krosky to do a super quick recap of the demographic presentation you heard about a week ago. And then we're going to ask Dr. Aspiris to do a quick recap of the resident survey, just so it's fresh in your minds as we start thinking forward.
Okay, thank you for that. It'll be super quick, but before I do that, I'm going to go off script just a little bit. It's great that we're talking about the accomplishments from the last 24 months and the Focus Action Plan. And I think, because we've had new council members on staff before we did an initial presentation about how that's not just by happenstance. I think it's important that you all know that the time you spend in this retreat really matters. The Focus Action Plan has tons of infrastructure behind it to make sure that we progress it. The city manager really commits to it. We have quarterly meetings that Dr. Aspiris and his staff lead. So the initiatives that you all create that come from this, every quarter, they're reporting to OPA, then MLT, which is my colleagues, Deputy City Manager, Chief of Staff, the manager, and I meet with folks and we talk about progress. Departments, every single department has a departmental performance plan and they have initiatives. Councilmember Hutchinson will remember what it's like to be on the other side. They have to report on that. They meet with the city manager and the deputy city manager. So I just want you to know that the Focus Action Plan does not sit on a shelf. We put a lot of intentionality behind operationalizing that to make sure that we make good and on your progress on things that matter to you. So I just felt like that needed to be stated. There's a lot of infrastructure behind making sure we operationalize our plan. Okay, so the reason why Julie gave me the mic, it's going to be super quick because I still feel like I'm floating in the clouds at last week's presentation. Michael did such an amazing job on just providing you with some statistics about our community. And essentially, he talks about population. It's like an intersection or interdependencies between population, housing, economic development, and affordability. And what was really interesting that he talked about was that population for us, as well as the schools, is largely flat. The real takeaway is the composition of those populations. For us as a larger city, the composition is that we're getting older. And migration will play a big role in how we address that. And what he talked about is that migration is largely influenced by housing. I think we hear a lot about our slow growth, but what was interesting from his data was that it's most cities in our state, over 250,000 population, are seeing slow to no growth. Folks are moving to more rural areas, and his hypothesis was that it's because housing is affordable. So how do you recruit jobs? How do you get people to migrate here? How do you retain younger folks if they can't afford the housing? So that's one of the things that he talked about. Education, the population of schools was interesting because, again, their population is the same, but when you look at the type of students or the students' needs, that's what's interesting. Whether it's students who are in their gifted learning program or students who have English as a second language, or folks with students with disabilities, they're seeing students that have higher needs, even though their population is pretty much staying the same. So those were some of the takeaways. For me, I also want us to think about number 5, about how these demographics and trends impact the services we provide. Some of the things that we are seeing in some of our department budgets for public safety, for instance, and Arlene, is like our aging in place. I know at one of the mayor's HOPE initiative meetings last year, one of the nonprofits uses our libraries to help with like memory games and creating community for our seniors. So there's some discussion about how can we support our aging population? What does it look like to be a community that embraces that? So just want to keep these things in mind. Slow to no growth, but that's not unique. We're seeing that with other larger cities, driven by affordability. How do we get people to move here? Attainable housing is likely one of those things. And then how does that impact our services? So super high level, we did these really cool booklets for you where you have a lot of his graphs. And, oh, you all did so great. Thank you for bringing them. You get a gold star, Councilmember Hutchinson. I'm not sure about the rest of your colleagues. But we have more if you want some. But we'll have most of his graphs and tables in there just so that you can have it as a backdrop as you think about the rest of your priorities.
Any questions, concerns? Thank you for your great work.
Yes, that is
Amelia?
that is just what I was going to say thank you. You can give a kudos to the entire staff for what they do behind the scenes. Thank you so much.
Hey, welcome.
Hello, good morning. Name is Dr. Phyllis Spears, and get to the slide here. So I'm just going to go over some highlights from the recent 2025 Virginia Beach Resident Survey. Again, this presentation was given back in July, and I'm just going to touch base on just the general purpose and methodology of it, and then also start going into some of the major findings from the study. So for the resident survey, the general purpose of this, there's 4 items here. The first is to objectively assess resident satisfaction with the delivery of major city services. Secondly, the resident survey could help determine priorities for the community. Also, we can use it to measure trends from the previous survey. The previous survey that was done was back in 2022. And then also we can use this to compare how Virginia Beach is doing with other communities, both regionally and nationally. So for the survey is a 7-page survey. It takes approximately 15 to 20 minutes to complete. Again, this was the second survey that was done. The previous one was done back in 2022. Administration was done by mail. It was also available online, and it was distributed to randomly selected city residents. The goal for the sample was 1,000 residents or 1,000 responses. In this case, we exceeded that. We had 1,206 completed surveys, and that is over 100 per city council district. Also, the margin of error for this is plus or minus 2.8% at the 95% confidence level. So this map here kind of shows that we had a really good representation throughout the city. All the red dots here were the responses that we've received. One thing to also note is that the demographics of the survey respondents actually reflect the population of the city. So we did get a good representation from this survey. Going to overall perceptions here, it's been very positive overall for the city of Virginia Beach. Nearly 90% rated the overall quality of life as excellent or good. Over 80% rated Virginia Beach as a great place to live and raise children. 75% were satisfied with the overall city services, with only 8% rating them below average or poor. And then 81% of the residents feel safe in Virginia Beach overall. Now comparing to the United States and then also our regional peers, Virginia Beach did rate quite well. Virginia Beach rated above the U.S. average in 41 of the 50 service areas, and 39 of those areas rated significantly higher, which is greater than 3%. Overall service quality rated 26% higher than the national average. Satisfaction with Virginia Beach as a place to live rated 38% above the national average. And customer service satisfaction rated 33% higher than the national average. Now, in regards to comparing us to our regional neighbors, we rated above the regional average in 36 areas, with 33 of those areas rating significantly higher, which is greater than 3%. There were some areas where there was citywide satisfaction. So all the geographical areas here saw quality of services as being quite good. You can see on the map here, everything here is highlighted as light blue, which has a rating of good. Additionally, all geographic areas showed the city with high satisfaction with Virginia Beach as a place to live. Again, you can see all areas showing as blue, and there's also 2 districts here with the darker blue, and that rated as excellent. Okay. And then lastly, all geographic areas showed high satisfaction with Virginia Beach as a place to raise children. Again, all areas showed as blue, and there's 2 districts with the darker blue rating it as excellent. Now, in comparison to the resident survey that was done in 2022, there have been some notable improvements in satisfaction. Some of those areas include quality of cultural and entertainment venues, feeling of safety in retail areas, availability of parks and recreation programs for children, feeling of safety in your neighborhood at night, and stormwater management flood control on neighborhood streets. Also, since 2022, there have been some notable decreases in satisfaction. Items include effort to protect natural resources in the environment, access to job opportunities that match your skills, confidence in the city's ability to meet basic needs during and after a natural or man-made disaster, how well the city is managing growth, and variety of housing options in the city. One of the questions that was asked from the residents was for them to identify the top issues over the next 3 years. What we have listed here are the top 5 that residents feel will be the next issues for the next 3 years. These include affordability of city services, taxes, and fees, housing affordability, public safety and crime, flood protection, and homelessness. And then lastly, these are the top overall community priorities. The items listed within the survey allowed the residents to rate both the importance and satisfaction of those items. There was a calculation that was made called the importance satisfaction rating, and that takes into consideration both the importance and also the lack of satisfaction of those items. The items here listed are the ones that had the most importance and the least satisfaction. So these items are affordable housing, public safety, stormwater management and flood control, resident involvement in policy and decision-making, managing growth, major street conditions, and enforcing junk debris cleanup on private property. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah.
Barbara?
I was going to ask about this fact that several, actually I think maybe more, of the topics show a decline in satisfaction between the 25 and the 22. Are we doing anything to look at these and see why we've declined in satisfaction? Or if there are particular issues that we need to be working on? I mean, as I mentioned before, the ability of the people to have public input is one that they're very low on. And it was surprising that they were so consistently dissatisfied with us not enforcing cleanliness or junk removal on local properties. That came up all over the place. So what are we doing there? Are we particularly looking at these that showed a decline and trying to pinpoint why and what we might do to improve?
Thank you for that question. I think between Dr. Spears and myself, survey data is probably our most favorite data set. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. We don't yet have a trend, right? This is our second time doing the survey, and many of those are within that margin of error. When you look at the first survey that we did and this survey, there are a few that are not. But so keep that in mind. We don't yet have a trend, so trying to see where we landed is important. We had similar questions we asked ETC. They're seeing an overall trend in the places that they're surveying. The national climate in itself is really interesting between the public and government right now. But to your point, yes, we are looking at that. Survey data offers evergreen data. So one of the things that OPA will be doing with the data sets is looking at opportunities to incorporate it into certain departments, DPPs, if your department's one of those areas where we're seeing a decline and we might want to dig further. These are Likert scale responses, right? So they can point you to places you want to peep in a little more, but they don't give you the question or answer the question why, what's deeper. So some of the things that Phil and I have talked about was necessarily, do we want to do interviews or focus groups around some of these areas so we can dive deeper? Sometimes it's perception, sometimes it's reality. Particularly when you get in some of the safety, you might see trends of where crime is actually down, but do people feel safe? So being able to ask the follow-up questions is important. So I would just say, keep in mind, we don't have a trend. The margin of error on some of these survey questions, and absolutely to your point, yes, OPA will be working with departments in an intentional way just to find out how can we discover more about the second set. But the third time that we do the survey will really be interesting because then we can say we have a trend or not.
It seems like I remember a lot of citizen surveys. I think I've got an awful lot of reports. So we might have done 2 with this company, but we can track many years with our citizen surveys. I'll bring my stack sometime.
Yeah, and it's fun because survey design questions, you get into where the question's written the same way, where they're on the same scale. Hopefully they all would have been random samples. I vaguely remember who we used previously didn't really have benchmarking data against the region or the nation, which is one of the reasons we wanted to get someone in who could offer that. But absolutely, we have those similar data sets and we explored from all sorts of areas, including crosstabs and things of seeing where are they declining. So tons of analysis on it.
Okay. Anyone else? Hutch and then Amelia.
So just one of them that I looked at under the notable decreases, and I fully appreciate what you're saying as far as the trend and new and the fact that some of them can be seen that way, you know, and I think the media does play a little bit of a part of it in it. And then I'm specifically talking about confidence in the city's ability to meet basic needs during and after a natural man-made disaster. that to me shows that there's something amiss, because we have had nothing but, we don't like for it to happen, but when it does happen, I can speak, we're on our state level teams for like hazmat, technical rescue and stuff like that. Your city has a state level team inside the city, and then we also have a state level team. You see what I'm saying? We're equivalent, and that's been proven over and over. Our police department has been called up to do the inaugurations and stuff like that. Well, you don't get called to stuff like that unless you're at the top of your game. E911 has added the AI stuff so that we've cut down the calls. EM has got the latest technology. They just redid the EOC. So we've had nothing to show other than we've had some stuff happen in the western part of the state, of which we responded to help out. But the western part of the state, maybe things didn't go as well as they could have. I'm not throwing any stones. I wasn't there. But if you see some of the national stuff, right, it shows a little bit that things maybe could have been handled better. And I would say not the Virginia Beach way. So I feel very confident in that. So that one just kind of jumped out at me. Thank you.
Yeah, Patrick?
Mr. Mayor, to Councilmember Hutchison's point, incidentally, anecdotally, don't know if this is like a quantitative thing with the survey. But to your point, around that time when folks were responding to the survey response, you had the wildfires in California, you had the historic floods that flooded Asheville and also the western part of the city, right? So all those things kind of go into people's mind. And you see the same dichotomy in that folks were satisfied and impressed with the work that we've done on stormwater, but still also rated one of their big concerns was flood protection, right? All those things can be true at the same time. They said, hey, kudos, good job on the efforts on the flood protection program, but this is really thing that we're still concerned about, So I think all those things kind of play into it.
And not to belabor that, but two things I do want to share on that. And similar to what Councilmember Hutchin is saying, because I know communications and TOPS, they're working on a community awareness, right? Because some of it is like making people aware of how they can improve their own safety. I know in another community, we did probably what we're going to do here. Theirs was around safety. The police chief was like, downtown came back rated much lower than we thought. But when you looked at crime stats, it was the safest it had ever been. So we did like community groups, we got people back together, and it was things like litter, lighting, getting graffiti removed. So that's where having conversations with people, you can see what's influencing that. So it could be people want to know how can they have better personal readiness, how can they connect with the city. So that's what these follow-up conversations will give us the opportunity to peel back the layers to make sure we're working on the parts that matter most. But the survey gives us almost a compass of how do we go in the right direction, but diving deeper requires us to actually talk to people. So that's what we'll do.
And if I can bring up two sterling examples about our response, Hutch, one of which was a number of years ago with the Good Friday miracle when an airplane crashed right in the middle of an apartment complex. I mean, the response by fire, EMS, police, everybody, our emergency response was classic. And the other one, a couple of years ago in April, when we had a tornado touchdown in a neighborhood, thankfully that was another miracle because nobody was, there was no loss of life, nobody was hurt. But if you go around, the site right after, you saw emergency response, community engagement were there, the insurance companies were out, and trees were being cleared almost as soon as it happened. And, and recently at the storm, I had a chat with the Weather Channel. And the one thing I brought up is that we have FEMA teams right here in terms of our always being ready that go out and help other people, as Hutch was saying. So, I think that's a point of pride that we have, that we are so adept at that area. Our emergency management and, coordination, and we also help several adjacent cities to supplement. We got a point of pride there.
Thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, I've got one more thing to talk through in terms of sharing our current context. We talked through the accomplishments, the demographics, the resident survey. There's one last piece of paper in your handout. It says Departmental Directors Environmental Scan Themes. So we also spent hour and a half with department directors to hear what some of the successes and challenges they're facing that we wanted to bring to your attention. I'm going to not highlight the successes that are on these on this paper. Encourage you to read them. Most of them made their way into the accomplishments drawing or the other accomplishments handout that you have. So I just want to highlight some of the challenges that the department directors say they're paying attention to as you start thinking about what your priorities are for the next 2 years. So we categorize them again in the govern, envision, invigorate. In the govern category, the demographic makeup of the city is changing due to aging and out-migration, and that impacts the services that departments are being asked to provide. Sustainable funding and programming for city services is a challenge. Departments are looking to leverage revenue options in an efficient way to provide the sustainable funding. Affordability impacts residents and it impacts city staff. It's causing difficulty in recruiting and succession planning and housing costs. Policy and funding changes at the state and federal levels are causing a lot of uncertainty. The city is anticipating reduced support going forward. There's a lot of expectation that there's not going to be as much federal money coming to localities and states. And so the city needs to prepare for that uncertainty of reduced federal and state support. Enhancement of community engagement, marketing, social media, and communication has been strong. It's also combined with a changing landscape of news media. And so because the news media has a smaller reach or smaller staff, residents are informed on specific topics, but there's declining civic awareness overall. And so that impacts when you're trying to reach out to people, it's harder to reach them because they know about one issue that's of importance to them, but maybe not the whole picture that you all as council members know. And then there's increased public engagement expectations can lead to longer project timelines, which delays delivery. So the more we involve the public, which is important, the longer it takes to complete projects. Flipping the page to Envision, again, I'm going to skip the successes, but there are many. In Envision, the challenges, there's a theme, uncertainty in navigating changes made by the federal and state government. That's not just funding, it's also regulations changing. There's challenges about conflicting goals and visions, particularly around land use and development and redevelopment. So when there is a lack of clear direction for staff, they need more direction to be able to make progress. Updating the comprehensive plan is a huge effort, and it also is has a lot of other implications. It's going to need to be accompanied by other ordinance updates, redevelopments, zoning changes, et cetera. Limited land available for new development, impacted by limitations such as industrial use, air rights, noise zones, soil issues, neighborhood concerns. So they hear loud and clear an interest in economic development, and there's limited land available because of these different restrictions, so there's a tension there. And then adjusting services according to the community population needs. As the demographics change, the services need to change. And then finally, in the Invigorate section, again, a theme, policy and funding changes at higher levels of government causes uncertainty for programs and for service delivery. So staff is trying to navigate those changes. Service demands are beginning to outnumber available resources, whether it's staff or time or money. A need to prioritize diversifying revenue streams for city services, so we're not just reliant on a few streams. Unfunded mandates combined with cuts at the federal and state level complicates how localities can provide needed services. There's a need to keep up with emerging technology, innovation, and upgrades to ease resource issues and meet stakeholder expectations. And it's not written here, but that takes time and money to keep up with emerging technology in order to save money. Across all departments, pretty much all departments, they are concerned about sustainable asset management, even the departments that aren't very visible to the public. So there's a lot of very public assets, facilities, fleets, et cetera. Other departments all have concerns about their assets and the funding to keep up with the capital upgrades. There's many important CIP projects that aren't funded. So they're on your radar, but they're not funded. And aging infrastructure across the city needs to be addressed and sometimes is deprioritized because something else becomes a higher priority, and that can compound maintenance costs. And then finally, balancing, giving key areas in the city attention and funds while addressing the needs of all areas of the city equitably. The staff is very aware and concerned about addressing priority needs, but also at the same time addressing all of the city and treating all residents equitably. And that's hard to do given the constraints. So we wanted to share some of what's on staff's mind before you start planning for your priorities. What I want to do briefly is just ask for reflections on these 4 topics we just talked about. The accomplishments that we walked through, the demographics, the resident survey, and these challenges from department directors. You came into the room thinking about your priorities, but are there any things that you're taking away from these presentations or handouts that we've just walked through that you think you need to be carrying forward as you start talking about your priorities for the next 2 years?
Okay, anything that we have right now? Stacy?
Thank you. Getting to the demographics, the demographic for the last several years shows that there's been no real growth of population in Virginia Beach. And, I would contend that that's really due to people migrating out of the area, going to surrounding cities and as far down as into North Carolina. It's not because Virginia Beach is not attractive or not attracting people. It's just that the migration of people to places with more affordable housing is greater than we're bringing people in. And we need to continue to look at ways to make the housing more affordable, because as time goes on, we're going to be losing school teachers and our emergency services and other city, valuable city employees. And if we can't have places for them to live, we're not going to be able to replace them, because the competition amongst the other cities and localities is getting greater. And if they can make the same salary and not have to drive across several miles to get to work, the attraction to stay here in Virginia Beach and to be employed here is going to be deterred. So that just makes the affordable housing issue even greater than we've seen in the past.
Okay. Well said. Josh?
Thank you, and absolutely well said, Councilman. And I think, we're not unique in the demographic shift by any means. I mean, we're having less kids these days. There's a aging baby boomer population, and that population pyramid is no longer a pyramid. It's more of a cylinder or a column, and which means cities like ours, regions, we're competing for people. We're competing for talented workers. And just like the councilman said, it all goes back to housing, because we need to be able to attract the people to live here. We need to be able to attract the workforce talent in order to attract the new business and to help alleviate residential taxpayers from the tax burden and diversify the tax revenue, by growing the business tax income.
Okay, Amelia and then Barbara.
Well, quite a few of the things I did want to see have been brought up, but I looked at the top 5 issues that we have over the 3 years: the affordability of city services, housing, public safety, flood protection, which is very important, and homelessness. Between all of those, I noticed some analogy that we're looking at aging population and aging infrastructure. Both go hand in hand. So this is a problem because we have to keep up with new technology, with all of this, keep up our buildings, and it all costs money. And with inflationary costs at this time, we've got to look at them, side by side. One of the things, especially to do with our demographics that we've mentioned, the outmigration. We've also mentioned the importance of some of our elderly, making sure they're able to age in place. That is key because we have, like Aragona and several communities that have been here a long time, and they would love to live continuously in this area. And if they can, maybe some of their children can also join in getting jobs here. But we've got to look at both, not only our demographics, but actually our infrastructure, our buildings. Recently, as you know, we are so happy to be able to move the election group into somewhere else. All of these matter and attract people when they see that we are paying attention not only to ourselves, but the housing, just like you do for your regular house. You have to always maintain. So this is important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barbara, and then Hutch.
Well, really, just following up on what Amelia was saying, with these 2 points that I was thinking of as far as our flat growth and so forth, is that we concentrate on quality in Virginia Beach rather than quantity. And the quality will result in the quantity as people are deciding where they're going to live. I think the quality of our services is extremely important. And we certainly have a city that nobody else can match as far as its natural amenities. Who else has got the beach and the waterfront and all of these wonderful things that we have in our environment? And those things are what attracts people. And so I think our mission is to make certain that we provide the quality of services and maintain the quality of this place that is so special. But then we also have to make sure that it doesn't get to be too expensive to live in Virginia Beach. We can't necessarily control a lot of the things that are cost of living, but we certainly have to control the taxes. And I think we have to look to see what our taxes are and make certain that we don't outprice people so that they can't afford to live in Virginia Beach. I kind of think we're maxed out with our taxes, and that's going to be a real challenge as we try to provide the services, that we don't find out that our taxes can't cover the cost. We raised the meal tax this past year, and I think it's at the top, folks. We can't go any higher. And about the same thing with our real estate because of the assessment increases, which we really can't control that much. So I think those 2 issues are going to be the ones that we really have to deal with that are very difficult. But that's where it is. If we're going to attract people, it's got to be quality, and it's got to be not only affordability in housing costs, but affordability in things like tax rates.
Hey, Hutch.
So I just wanted, it's similar, but it's slightly different of what everybody's been saying is that what the Deputy City Manager Krosky and Mr. Evans from HR Alliance presented to us, and, did make some notes about it. They're saying the median rent now is $1,650. That was double my first house payment, and more than my house I'm living in. So to hear that that's the median, that's as what Ms. Henley is saying, things are getting quite almost out of reach is what it feels like, especially for the folks in our city that work here, which leads to the migration, right? That's what I'm really concerned about. And it goes across all of our employee staff. I speak a lot about the public safety part, but all the way down the line, everybody's got to get to work. Whether we've got to, I think about the snowstorm this year. What a testament to what we have in place in this city is that by noon, 1 o'clock the next day, most of our businesses were either back open or moving towards being back open. And there's 900 square miles of roads to be cleared. So it's everybody's got to play in this. And so when I see this, one of the slides we had, it shows $150,000 home sale price versus affordable home. And I think that's a lot, and it went up. And it went up from 2018 at $26,000. My goodness, how does it go up that fast? That's just incredible. And then obviously we showed, I think Mike did a very good job showing that we're building the $750,000 homes, and we're building a lot of the multifamily, but we need that middle ground, which is about the 350 mark. I'm coming to an end, but one of the takeaways for me in the considerations that y'all put forward, and I think it's where we do have to work with our development partners. They get a bad rap a lot of times, but if we let them know, which we're doing right now, that these are the home prices that we need you to come in at, and they do their own homework, they understand. I've talked to a couple of, they know that as well, but we have to help with that, and I think the grant and stuff like that is working in that direction. But I would implore us to figure out any way we can to get that number up so that the prices can be affordable at the 350 mark. Because you're talking about engineers and battalion chiefs and people that are in the mid-level management or above, and they're having a hard time affording, or they need two incomes coming in to make this affordable. Anyway, I know I'm being a little long, but I really feel this is of the utmost importance. If you're looking at one of our top 5 and what we're having to address, I think this is one of them. Thank you.
Okay, let's go with Worth and Michael.
Thank you, Mayor Dyer. This is a great discussion. Follow up on last week when we were presented the numbers, and I'll kind of repeat a little bit of what I said last week. I call it the flight to the exurbs, or going to cheaper housing in areas where it's less affordable. We're a victim of our own success here. That being said, and also, we're not alone. Fairfax County, home to 9 Fortune 500 companies, great jobs, high-paying jobs. They have zero growth. It's all about affordability. So that being said, no easy answers. We can't make houses affordable other than maybe supporting more density, and that's a touchy issue. But I get back to setting priorities, because we do need to keep the cost of government down and our taxes as affordable as we can, at the same time giving city services that the public deserves. And so I get back to, I think the public wants public safety, and they want great public schools, and of course transportation and the other things in the discussion this earlier today about the ITA. I think that's all aspirational. It was a great discussion, but I don't know where we're going to find the money. But so I get back, I think we should set our priorities on public safety, the basic core services of local government. Thank you.
Michael?
Thank you. I agree. It's a really good discussion. And when I look at the top 5 issues over the next 3 years, I see a few things. One is a common thread, but a piece of that is missing, and that's jobs, jobs, jobs. We spent a little time in the beginning talking about ITA, and whether it's economic development expansion with Innovation Park or whether it's sports tourism. both could simultaneously expand our economy and provide economic opportunity and mobility for people who live here. And I think having a discussion about what these top 5 issues are without talking about economic mobility, expanding our economy, and that's really what economic development is all about. We talk about it in terms of, revenue and economic impact, but what we're talking about is jobs for people. And you want to address the housing affordability crisis, the affordability of city services taxes, public safety, homelessness. I would add to that list mental health, which Councilmember Ross Hammond elevated earlier. Many of those things are substantially impacted by the presence of meaningful job opportunities. And we can't have a discussion about any of those things without prioritizing that, in my mind. It's also a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Without economic mobility, economic opportunity, job opportunities of many different sorts, we will continue to have an aging population that will be in need of more services, and because of their retirement status and the limitations on their household budget that come with retirement, will be more challenging to confront the affordability of city services. So I think that has to be prioritized at the top of the heap. And there was something else I was going to add to that, but I can't remember what it is right now. So maybe we'll circle back.
Been there, done that. I'll
So-
tell you what, if I could just, perhaps, capsulize things. This is a situation that all localities are facing, not just us. Patrick and I are reconvening the mayors and chairs of all the people in the 757 because we share the same concerns, the same problems going forward. And, we have to work on it among ourselves, but we have to work with the other cities because we're all necessary and integrated with the economic vitality. But I'll tell you, it was a great conversation. And Michael, I think you had a...
I had a restoration of my train of thought. Schools. I don't see schools on the list. And the schools may not be on the list because our educational system in Virginia Beach is so good and so strong that sometimes we have a tendency to possibly take it for granted. But we have an amazing K through 12 public education system in Virginia Beach with incredible people who work there, and the students are high performing. It's second day at school, so I'm sure that they're all excited to be back. But this is key to all the things that we addressed before. We just have to make sure that we continue to keep it on track. I think we have work to do, though, in the early childhood education space, and I don't think we have tackled and how that relates to jobs and economic mobility and prosperity, but also childhood development and early childhood education is a place where we need work, and I would include higher ed in that too. There's been some exciting developments, lots of growth, but higher educational opportunities is another thing that I think our region needs to address. But as a city, we're making progress, but have more work to do.
So Mayor, I'm right on time. Before we break for lunch, we asked you, council members, to come in prepared to share your top up to 5 priorities for the next 24 months. I'm not going to ask you to share them now, but I'm going to ask you to write them down now so that after lunch you can all share them. We've got 5 big Post-it notes for each of you. And so you can write up to 5. We also have a very specific number of dots for later. We're not going to let any miscounting happen later. So preserve your dots for later. So again, you were asked to come in knowing some of your priorities, but you just heard some more about your accomplishments, more about the demographics, more about what's the residents are saying, and what's on your department directors' minds. So if you want to adjust what you said, you thought you were going to say, you are welcome to do that. So write one priority per big Post-it note. If you write and you want to rewrite something, let us know, but you've only got 5 Post-it notes, so we'll swap one out. And then we're going to break for lunch. Any questions about what I'm asking you to do right now?
Yeah. Thanks, Julie. Yeah, so like public safety, do you just put public safety down, or do you put specifics about public safety or public education? Or if someone says, make Virginia Beach more affordable, I mean, that's certainly our priority. How do you do that?
Yeah, so we will be spending time after lunch when you share this, going into more detail so that the staff knows what you mean. I'm assuming that a lot of you are going to have similar priorities, so we'll be grouping some of them. If I were a staff member and I just heard public safety, I would say, I'm not quite sure what he wants. And so more detail is better. But if it's an umbrella for a lot of things that you want to say, you can have the big umbrella with some more detail. Councilmember Henley, did you have a question too? Yeah. Same question. Okay. Yes, Dr. Ruskin.
Just on another note from Councilman Belushi, we welcome 60,000 students for this year, K through 12.
I will ask you to use the Sharpies because it's easier to see from a distance. And I can give you different Post-it notes if you need to. So with that, we are going to leave you doing your writing, and we're going to take a 45-minute lunch break. So it's 11:48 to, we're calling it 11:50. Tell me what 45 minutes after 11:50 is. 12:35, we're coming back. So if anyone needs to get some fresh air, make some phone calls, write some emails, you're welcome to, but please be back by 12:35. And I believe lunch is ready in the back room for anyone that wants to start. And we're on break.